This conference will now be
No,
recorded.
no. No, I was going to say not just.
This
Okay, I
conference
just
will now be
finished.
recorded.
I just
All right.
finished with chemo
Let-
infusion, and
yes.
it damn near killed me.
Right.
I was scheduled
Jim,
for session.
Jim,
Yep.
we're going to ask you some questions, and
Okay.
then we'll give you time to respond. I have a copy of my questions? I think I just ran out. So I'm going to do this from memory. Yeah, I don't have a sheet to fill out. I'm going to do this from memory. So then the guys will know all about you, and then you can talk to them. Okay, that's how
Okay.
we sort of run it in here. So Jim,
Okay.
how old are you?
I'm 82.
Okay, and where do you live?
But I'm really a handsome fella.
That's all right. They'll love you for that. Where do you live, Jim?
Pardon?
Where do you live?
I didn't understand the question.
Where do you live?
Oh, I live in Santee, South Carolina, right between Charleston and Columbia.
Okay, I know somebody who's just moved there. And when were you first diagnosed with prostate cancer?
I think it was about 10 years ago.
Okay. And do you remember any information about that diagnosis, like your Gleason score or how many cores you had or anything like that? What do you remember about that
They started
diagnosis?
me on Zytiga, the drug Zytiga. He put me on that, and that worked fine. It did fine.
Okay,
And for
time
some
out.
reason, pardon?
Time out. When you
Okay.
first got diagnosed, you think it was about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
What was your
a
Gleason score?
It was a little confusing. I have lung cancer, and the lung cancer is stage 4. It spread to my brain, my chest, my ribs, everything. And then they couldn't find why it kept growing on my ribs and my bones. And that's how they found out that it was prostate cancer, which is a different cancer than my lung cancer.
Right. And you think that was about 10 years ago?
That was about 10 years ago. I've had my lung operation about 15 years ago. So it was about 10 years ago when they first found the.
And when they found it, where was it? In your lungs as well?
No, just in the prostate and on the bones.
So it was in the bone and
Yes,
prostate.
it had
And they
metastasized
metastasized
to the bones.
Right. And they gave you, and you say that back then they gave you Zytiga?
Zytiga.
Zytiga.
I think that's what it was called, the drug, Zytiga.
Yeah.
And I took pills, and that seemed to control it. And then it got a little bit out of hand. And,
right. So let me just say that probably if they gave you Zytiga back then, it would have been on a trial because I don't think it was approved till around 2014.
There easily could have been. I go to the University of South Carolina, Medical University of South Carolina, and they do a lot of that.
Okay.
Trial stuff.
And what sort of doctor have you been seeing? An oncologist?
Yes.
And I know you see an oncologist for your lungs, but for your prostate, have you been seeing a different oncologist or is it the same one?
Yes. My prostate oncologist is different than my lung oncologist.
Okay, and what's the name of your prostate oncologist?
Dr. Gordine, Gourdine. Dr. Gordine.
Gordine. That sounds like a good Louisiana name. Okay, now, how long did the Zytiga work for?
I would say it worked for about 8 years.
Wow. Okay.
And then my PSA started to elevate, so they had to try other things. And my PSA right now is over 1,000.
Okay. And have you, when you were taking the Zytiga, were you taking other drugs like prednisone?
Yes.
Okay. And when did you start some different type of treatment?
When did I stop?
When did you
What?
stop when did you stop the Zytiga and
When
start
my
something else?
when my PSA started to go up, he decided that the Zytiga wasn't working any longer, so we tried different things, and that's where I'm at now.
What level was your PSA when they started? When
I'm
they
going to have to
started,
guess. I'm going to have to guess on that. I would say probably 100.
okay. And right now you've done 4 rounds of docetaxel, is that right?
No, 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 no. I was right now. I'm supposed to be into 6 rounds of chemo infusion, and I took 3 of them, and it damn near killed me. It was just absolutely terrible.
Right.
So I told him about it. He took,
What
pardon?
chemotherapy did you take?
I don't know the name of it. I don't know the name.
Okay.
It was called, as far as I know, it was chemo infusion.
Right. So there are all kinds of different chemo infusions. So
I understand.
docetaxel is one.
That's my big question that I want to ask you. He has me scheduled in 4 weeks. I should clear my body up in 4 weeks. He wants me to start infusion with Jevtana, Jev.
Jevtana.
Yeah. Is that
Okay.
going to kill me too? I mean, is that going to knock me on my ass?
No, that is a more, for most men, that's a more easily tolerable drug
Okay.
for
Because
most
he's going
men.
to put
Now,
me on that one, and then he's going to follow up with a new drug out of New Orleans called Pluvicto, Pluvicto. So we've
right.
got two,
Right.
two that we
So
can work
here's
on.
so we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, we will
Okay,
talk
but
about that.
this
But
Jeff Tanado, that's not too bad. I can live with that.
so here's my question. Do you know if they've ever done any what's called genomic testing? Have they taken your tissue or your blood and looked at what type of mutations you have?
I give blood every time I go in. I give blood, and I don't know what they do or what they're looking at. I get a report from them, and it's probably 6 pages of stuff,
Right. Have
and I
they
don't
ever
understand.
sent your tissue or your blood away to be analyzed?
I do not know.
Okay. So let's talk about a few things here, and then I'll let the guys talk to you. Now, do you have a pencil there? Because I'm going to ask you to make some notes because you have to talk about this with your doctor, Dr. Gordine.
Dr. Gordine, right?
Tell me when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. First of all, you've done 3 sessions of chemo already, correct?
But I'm done. He stopped it.
you have done 3 sessions of chemotherapy. You've done already completed 3 sessions of chemotherapy, correct?
No, chemo infusion. I don't know if
That's
there's a
chemo.
difference.
That is the same as chemotherapy,
Okay.
okay?
I did 3 of them and damn near killed me.
Right.
Couldn't breathe.
Now, we got it. The 3 sessions were very, very hard on you. We understand that. Now, the question for Dr. Gordine is, why do you have to do Jevtana? Why can't you do Pluvicto right away? You don't need to do any more chemotherapy before you do Pluvicto.
I like that thought. I'll ask him
Okay,
that.
so you need to ask him, why does he want to give you more chemotherapy? Number 1.
I
Okay.
agree.
Number 2, you ask about the Jevtana. There are men on this call who have had Jevtana. They will talk to you about it in a minute. It is designed usually to come after the chemo infusions that you had. And it is usually easier on your body, but not always. Some people have trouble with it, but most people do not. And it might be easier for you if you have to do it. But if you've had such a difficult time so far, the question is, why do you have to do it? Okay, that's the second thing. The third thing is, if they have not already sequenced you, and the doctor will understand that when you use that term, if they haven't sequenced you, you need either your tumor or your blood sequencing for mutations. All right? To look and see if there are any particular drugs that you're suited to.
He questions all the time because I don't have any pain. There's no pain in my body.
Okay,
Why is my PSA over 1,000 and I don't have pain in my body? He doesn't understand.
One of the things he needs to do is sequence you. I don't know. I haven't looked in the chat, but I don't know if Dr. Gordine specializes in prostate cancer or not.
Yes, he does.
Okay, well,
I'm not sure. He is listed as both for GI and prostate. So it's not really, he's not a prostate cancer specialist.
right. You may need a doctor who specializes in prostate cancer, because I'm thinking he may not be up on everything. Like, for example, he doesn't need to do the Jevtana before he sends you for Pluvicto. You're already eligible for Pluvicto, and he could be applying for you to do Pluvicto now. And sometimes one of the
You like
things
the
we do,
Pluvicto better than the other one.
well, it's a different type of treatment, and if you're not responding, if your PSA is going up on the chemo infusion, which is called docetaxel, which you had, then maybe you're better off. Now, we can't give you medical advice here, so I'm not telling you what I like better, what I like worse. We can tell you the questions you've got to ask your doctor. And that's what we're doing right now.
I asked him that question, and he said that he wanted to go like step 1, step 2, step 3. Step 1 was the one I just finished. Step 2 is the Jevtana, and step 3 is that Pluvicto. So that's why he said I should do all of them, not just go from there.
And that's why we're saying maybe you need a doctor who specializes in prostate cancer.
Okay, I understand.
Okay. Now, I think I've extracted as much information as I can from you, Jim.
Thank you very much, Rick.
Why don't I allow other people to talk to you,
Thank you.
or for you to ask people what issues they've had, either with Pluvicto or with Jevtana or with the docetaxel, which is the drug you probably got. So let me throw it open to anybody.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate your time.
Okay.
So
Anybody
Jim,
want? Go ahead.
So Jim, let me tell you that I had 3 doses of docetaxel and it didn't nearly kill me, but they decided that I shouldn't get any more. So it's not unusual that you get this situation. But the question, do have a couple of questions. Have you had any recent scans of where your tumor is?
No, I asked him, why don't they just cut it out? And he said he can't because it's spread.
So do you know where it's spread?
Do I know where it's spread? No.
Okay,
But I'm
so
going in.
I think one thing I would like you to ask your doctor is where do you know that it is? Number one. Number two, Pluvicto is a very new treatment and it's directed at prostate cancer cells that carry a marker on them. And the marker is detected by a scan called PSMA PET. It has other names. There are several different brands. Have you ever had a scan for PSMA PET?
PET scan is the farthest I've gone. I have CTs and MRIs and a PET scan. Those are the only 3 I've had.
Right, but do you know what kind of a PET scan you had?
Oh, no, I didn't know I didn't know there were different kinds.
Right, so PET is positron emission tomography, and there are different things that emit positrons. So depending on what they're looking for, they'll give you one thing or another to do the scan. But if you are going to be a candidate for Pluvicto, you would like to do a PSMA PET scan. So if you haven't had that, the other
No.
question I had is, and you don't know if you've ever had any genetic testing.
Any what?
Genetic testing of either you or your tumor.
No.
Okay, that's a very important question to ask your doc.
Genetic testing.
Right, of both you, which is called germline. You want to make this down, Jim.
Herb. Let's
Right.
keep it simple. Let's keep it
Well, I
simple.
am.
Let's ask let's ask Jim to ask his doc to do the sequencing. Let's not confuse it with the genetic testing
Okay.
right now. Depending on the results, we can continue with that, okay?
When I ask him to do a sequence, then he'll know what that means to be able
He
to tell
should.
me.
Yes,
He will
but
know.
you tell him that you want your tumor and your blood sequencing. Okay, your tumor and or your blood sequencing. That's what you want. All right. What Herb is talking about with the genetic is a subset of that. It's a part of that, and we can come back to that later. But
Okay.
Herb makes a really important point. The first thing that you must get right away is a PSMA scan. You have to tell your doc you need a PSMA scan. Okay?
PSMA
scan. Because without that, we don't know whether Pluvicto will work for you. We can't talk about Pluvicto until you've had a PSMA scan.
That's why he said that he couldn't give me that until after, I think I'm
Yeah,
going
but
August 10th for a PET scan.
Okay, so in other words, he's got you set up for a PET scan, is that right?
Yes, and August 10th.
Okay, why is it 5 weeks away? It shouldn't be 5 weeks away when you've got a PSA of 1,000. He can set that up in 2 weeks. You don't need to do the Jeff Tanner first. So
I do want to ask another question, Jim. Is it your PSA is now 1,000, you say? What was it before you started these 3 infusions? Do you know?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question.
So you had these 3 chemo, what you're calling chemo infusions, they're chemotherapy. Did you have a PSA measurement before you had those?
Oh yeah, it went up. I get a PSA every month.
Okay, and what was it before you started those chemo?
Oh, I'd have to look it up to see, but I would guess 500.
And then did it go down when you were taking the chemo?
No. Well, it went up first, then it went down just a little bit, then it leveled off for the 3rd week. And that was disgusting. All the pain I went through and everything, and it didn't go down a bit.
Okay. So the one thing I will say is that the mechanism of action of Jatana is really very similar to what you already had. They both work on the same way, more or less. And so I'm really following up what Rick said, which is to say, I don't see a real cause for using Jatana at the moment if you can get Pluvicto.
Yeah, I'm hoping I can do that with him too. I don't want to do this. Chemo scared the hell out of me. I thought I was going to die a couple of times.
But I also think going back to the history that you've had, you have 8 various treatments, it would be good for a second opinion at this point about your treatment.
You mean
I
another
mean,
doctor?
have you only seen this one doctor?
Yes.
Well, most of us have seen more than one doctor. We'll tell you that even though we trust our primary doctor, periodically we get a checkup with somebody else who's a specialist. And I think that would be good for you too, just to know that you're on the right track. I mean, it's not, mostly they won't subject you to any, excuse me, they won't subject you to any really different.
How would I do that? Would I go into him and say, look, I want to get another opinion, refer
Either
a doctor?
that, well, I mean, you don't have to go to him. You can just go and there are doctors we can recommend whose primary focus is prostate cancer, and you make an appointment with them and say, look, I would like your opinion of my case, just as a backup. And they'll do that.
Okay. It's a good suggestion.
I mean, I think that it wouldn't hurt. There's no downside to it, right? What's the downside? Either this person says, yeah, I agree with the
hurt his feelings, I think. I think he would be.
well, I'm not worried about hurting a doctor's feelings, to be honest.
Okay. I understand.
I'm more worried about getting a treatment for your disease than hurting a doctor's feelings.
I understand. I agree.
And I would strongly suggest that and maybe I'll let Rick take over this line of finding a close by prostate cancer doc that you can use as a second opinion.
So here's the issue, Jim. There are ways in which you've been treated that give us some concern. The time that it's taken to jump in and to switch treatments and the sequencing of these treatments would make us think that maybe this is not Dr. Gourdin's field. And because of that, and even though he's at the University of South Carolina, we think that you might want to talk to another doc, and you may want to involve that doctor in your treatment. Now, there's probably no one that comes to mind in, there may be one doc at the University of South Carolina, but I seem to recall that we had issues there too. This was several years ago with a guy, and I'll look in a minute when someone else is talking, if my internet is working. The first question is, how far are you willing to travel to try and get the right doc?
Oh, I don't think that's a factor.
Okay. So what I would suggest you do is consider a doctor that we work with very, very closely, who we like a lot, who's based in Houston. Would that be acceptable?
I understand what you're saying. Thank you. Are you going to send me a name?
Okay. Do you know how to use the chat window on this computer? We have a chat window where we talk to each other.
I think so.
Okay, it's a little bubble. On the top, there's a little speech bubble. If you press that, it'll open a window. And there's some messages in there.
Yes, I have 3 right here now already.
Okay.
Zytiga.
Somebody, right. Now, somebody is going to be very kind and put in the name of a doctor we like. We call her Dr. E. And her full name is Dr. Eleni Efstathiou. It's a Greek name. And she works out of Houston Methodist in Houston, next to MD Anderson. She used to work at MD Anderson for 14 years until last year. And we're going to put her name in there. We're going to put her email, her a link so you can see what she's about. And we're going to put her telephone number. And if you call and tell them that you got her name from AnCan, they'll make an appointment with you, and maybe they can even do it telemed. Hopefully they can do it telemed and start working with Dr. E, and she'll help you a lot. Okay?
Okay, I'll look forward to it.
And she'll try. Now, is someone on putting Dr. E's info in there? Okay, thanks, Ben. So Ben will put Dr. E's information in there for you momentarily. And
Okay.
who is on the call right now who's seen Dr. E, who can say something? Do we have any? Yeah, Julian. Julian, you want to just talk a little bit about seeing Dr. E?
Hey, Rick,
Yes.
this is Russ Hoover, not Julian.
Okay.
I'd like to thank AnCan in general, you in particular. I saw Dr. E last month. You definitely want to go to this woman. And I'll get into the details when my time comes up. But yeah, you definitely need to see her. And AnCan will open the door for you and get you in.
Okay. And she specializes in prostate cancer. Julian, do you want to say something about Dr. E? Thanks, Russ. Looks like your microphone might not be working.
Mine?
No, Julian.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, now there you go.
I was having technical difficulties too.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I didn't
Go
have
ahead,
any.
Julian.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what was going on.
So
Yes,
do you want to
I
give
got-
a little discussion about your visit with Dr. E and
Well,
working
Dr.
with
E
Dr. E?
Is extremely thorough. He goes over the questions you provide, and on top of that goes into even more detail than you thought you could get in one visit. So If you don't put your questions down, she will go over them with you, which she knows is the standard procedure for her. So she looks at my questions and answers every one of them, and then she turns around and starts asking me the questions, and I respond to them, because we went from A to Z on everything I needed to know. When things did start working for me with the first go round of Abby and Lupron, she changed me over to Nubeca and Orgovix, and I'm doing a whole lot better on those two. I haven't had flashes, but you know, I was having hot flashes before, but she's very in tune with what you do, and if she needs to see you, she will tell you she needs to see you. I don't expect to see her until September at the earliest, because I'm steady as she goes, and if I have any issues, I can contact her at any time I want.
Okay. Okay. So I just sent a message to everybody, to John Antonucci, that was supposed to go to Peter Kafka. So now we're straightened out here. All right. Anybody else have anything that they'd like to say to Jim Nelson before we move on?
Thank you so very, very much. I do appreciate your time.
Well, and she does have a great staff, by the way.
Yeah.
Pardon?
She has a great staff.
Yes,
Hey,
I did.
I wanted to ask Jim, what's the status of the lung cancer? Is that cured? Do you know?
No, that's in, what do you call it?
Remission?
Remission.
Yeah, where it's not growing and it's not getting worse. It's staying like the same. The one that scares me is the brain cancer. That I've had 4 operations there already, and but that seems to be controlled too. I'm taking a Levotiny. Can't remember the name of it now. I'm on a new drug for that, and that seems to be working very good. It's got everything under control. Loretinib, something like that.
Loretinib. So let us ask you a question. Is the cancer in your brain from the lung, from the
Yeah.
prostate? It's
No,
from the lung.
The brain is from the lung.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
That's the one.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Rick. I appreciate your time very much. I
Okay.
really do.
So you're on our list now. Come back every week and tell us how you do. If you have any problems, you can let us know. You can write, and we can help straighten things out. And I will give I have to send a note to Dr. E. I'll give her a heads up that that you're going to call and make an appointment
I
with
do
her.
have the information too. I was given that. Thank you.
Okay, you saw the information in the chat window. Her
Yes,
name.
I have it. I have it.
Okay, and what I'll do in a moment, or can somebody put a link in? Julian, can you put Dr. E's URL in so that James can click on it and see?
I have it. I have it. I have it.
It's in there, Rick. It's in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh, it's in there.
Sent
Yes,
it to
thank you
me.
very much. Thanks a lot. Excellent. I
Ben
just
put
saw.
it in there.
Great. Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you.
He should try to find out what his Gleason score was.
Well, does it matter, Jeff?
Well, it'll at least tell you how rapidly it's going to go now.
Yeah, but he's already up to 1,000. So, Dr. E's going to find all that out when he brings his records over. Does it matter to him? You got to think about that and got to know your customer here. Okay. Let's keep on going here. And Martin Perrotta, you haven't been with us for years. Tell us what is on your mind, please.
Yeah, good evening, gents. Right now, I've been recommended. It's been recommended by my radiation oncologist at Jefferson University in Philadelphia that I undergo something called the MRI linear accelerator. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that, but it's supposed to be a precision oncology tool that tracks any cancer clusters in your body and zaps them apparently with a dose of radioactivity. And that's supposedly, I guess, an alternative to chemo. So I don't know. Has anyone ever heard of that? Or
Would you, Martin, would you just like to give people a quick review of your disease history so we know how many Mets you are and
For sure, yeah. I was diagnosed 2 years ago with metastatic disease. I had a Gleason score of 5+4. I think there were 7 or 8 cores to 50% or more. It was metastatic to 2 lymph nodes. I've been on Eligard since that time. I had radiation, whole gland radiation, and I'm right now on Xtandi and enzalutamide, and my PSAs have been kept pretty low, although lately they've started to uptick. My last PSA was a 5, and they were pretty much for the last 2 years, they've been down around 1, but now they started to go up to a 5, which means I guess I'm metastatic castrate resistant. But at any rate, I'm trying to decide on my next treatment alternative. As I say, either this MRI linear accelerator or chemo. I just had a PSMA PET, and it shows nothing except 2 enlarged lymph nodes, which were the same original 2 lymph nodes I've had since the very beginning. So that's a quick rundown.
Yeah, so let me respond to that. The standard of care treatment for you right now is what they're recommending. Don't get tied up with this linear accelerator language, okay? Because there are a lot of ways that they can deliver the standard of care treatment. And the standard of care treatment for you would be what's called spot radiation, spot RT, right?
Yep.
And that's appropriate because you only have a couple of places that we can see the disease.
Right.
And you're on the enzalutamide. It's been doing a relatively good job. You're tolerating it. So yes, you could do chemo, but the more conservative way to go is to do the spot radiation. Now we can do this with CyberKnife. We can do this with other types of radiation equipment, and the linear accelerator is just another type of machine that can deliver the radiation directly to these targets that they see. So the real question is, should I do spot radiation right now, or should I do chemotherapy right now?
Right.
And let me turn it over to, because I think that's where Herb was going to jump in, so I'll turn it over to Herb.
Thank you.
Again, that I don't know why I mean, I'm get a little tongue tied here. So the question is between chemo and spot radiation, but you're telling us that the scan only picked up 2 spots in lymph nodes.
Yep. Yes.
And so the question is, what would be the advantage of chemo versus radiation? And I think there may be that you have to discuss this with both your radiation oncologist and your GU oncologist, and let them each tell you what they think is the advantage of their treatment. Now, spot radiation, the idea that it's MRI guided versus something like CAT scan guided, that's just basically saying that they can more precisely direct the radiation to the lymph nodes rather than letting it spread. On the other hand, if there were any hint that there were other micrometastases, then it would say, well, maybe you need to do more than just those 2 lymph nodes. And I don't think we can determine that without a good discussion between those 2 docs.
And they are on the same team at Jefferson. One's Dr. Greenberg, he's a radiation oncologist, great guy. And I'm seeing the medical oncologist at Jefferson, Dr. Mike Kelly, on Thursday. So I'll make a decision after I speak to Dr. Kelly, who's a genitourinary.
Right. Have you seen
Yeah.
Kelly before?
I mean, Bill. I think it's Bill Kelly. I'm sorry.
Have you seen him before?
No.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I'm going to talk really frankly, but I personally would have some concerns around Kelly.
Well,
I don't know that he's your best choice. He's not on the call today, but we've got a guy that has seen Kelly for years. And frankly, I don't think I would be happy with his decision making. He has a fair reputation, but based on the other guys, and if you want, I'd be happy to put you in touch with that guy. If you
Who do you
haven't
like in
seen,
Philly? Who do you like in Philly, Rick?
In
Well-
Philly, I would go to either Dr. Gainesman at Fox Chase or Dr. Naraya.
I got okay. I have an
Penn.
appointment with Dr. Narayan at the end of the month also. So
Okay, so we like Dr. Naraya. In fact, we're trying to do some work right now with Dr. Naraya. We're trying to collaborate with him on a project, on a research project. He's really good. And I will also tell you that we hear really good things about, there's a little Indian lady there, East Indian lady who's a radonc that we hear really good things about, who works with
at University of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and hold on a minute, and I can probably tell you her name. I think I've got it written down. Hold on 1 second. I've got to save what I just wrote for you and get over to Stephen Saft's. Let's see, did I write down the name of that lady that he likes so much? No, but I tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to send you a telephone number for Steve Saft. He's not on the call today. He's
Okay.
really our expert in terms of docs in Philly.
All right.
Because he's been through most of them. He'll talk to you about the Jefferson people. He'll talk to you about the Penn people. I think he knows the Fox Chase people. Our Fox Chase man is not on the call today. That's Joe Gallo.
I know Joe.
Okay, so you can connect with Joe Ray Fox Chase, and I would definitely talk to Steve about Naraya versus Kelly.
Okay.
Okay.
I will. Thank you.
And I'm just going to send you a personal message right now with Steve's email and telephone number.
Thanks,
And
Rick.
just tell him it came from us at the meeting, and he's a good navigator for you on this issue. But if it were me, I think that I'd probably see if I could get a result in holding this in check for a little longer with spot radiation. I don't know, Len, what's your thinking on this?
On spot radiation versus what? IMRT?
Chemo.
I kind of agree with what Herb said. He should talk to his radiation oncologist and medical oncologist, get their rationale for why they might want to do both. But, just speaking personally, I would agree with you, Rick, that if it were me, I would just opt for the more conservative treatment of the spot radiation. And if that doesn't solve the problem, then go to chemo. But that's just my personal preference. But I mean, I like Herb's advice that he should talk to his doctors and get their rationale for why they want to do it that way.
Thanks, Len. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to say to Martin before we move on?
Martin, this is Peter. That was the course I took. I did spot radiation proton beam to a couple of lymph nodes, and then it brought me a couple of years, and then I had to do chemo after that.
Okay, I didn't hear that. Who was speaking there?
This is Peter Kafka. So
Oh, Peter. Okay, I'm sorry.
I had a recurrence, and it was in my soft tissue lymph nodes in my chest, and I chose to have spot radiation, and I ended up doing proton beam. I could have done SBRT, but it bought me 2 years, and then when things went south again, I had to do chemo.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Peter. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. You're sounding a little muffled today, Peter. Is something different where you are?
I hope not.
I don't know. It doesn't sound, you're not as clear as you usually are. Maybe it's the storms over the Pacific Ocean. Who knows?
Might be.
Did you get home? Obviously, you got home safely. Did you get home without incident?
Yes, it was fine.
Good.
So-
Good.
Are we done with Martin now?
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Yes. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to James's situation for a second, because I just hung out with a friend of mine who's been on our call before, a guy who lives here. I just was over at his house. He also has both lung cancer and prostate cancer, and he has a met on his spine, and the doctors here think it's lung cancer, and he just started Lupron for his prostate cancer, but he's not really doing much else. I suggested he get a PSMA scan. They can do the gallium scan here, because the doctors are just guessing that the met is driven by lung cancer, but nobody really knows. But a PSMA scan should give you a little more definitive idea of whether it's driven by
Right.
prostate or lung.
Absolutely. And what's his current PSA, Peter?
6.
He could do an Axumin scan as well.
Yeah. Well, I think they're doing the gallium kit in Honolulu, so you could do that.
Okay. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, the only concern is that we don't know if he makes PSMA. So if it came back negative, he may need to follow that up with an Axumin just to be sure.
Right.
But if he's got metastatic cancer and nothing shows up with a PSMA, it probably means he doesn't make PSMA rather than he doesn't have cancer.
Yeah. Hard to say.
Yeah. Anyone else want to comment on Peter's on how to diagnose what this med is on his friend's spine? Okay. So we'll move right along, and we'll go to Marc Valens. Marc, what's up? Are you with us, Mark? Your microphone's on. We're not hearing you right now. I know this is your microphone's off. Turn that microphone. Yeah, now it's on. Can we hear you? No, I don't know what's. I think the one thing, Mark, I would definitely recommend to you is to call GoTo and see if they can troubleshoot your system, because I know we have this with you every time. And let me see if I can put the help number for GoTo in the chat window. Chris Tissot, yes, I can. Bear with me. So here's a number, here's a telephone number for support from them, and you got to work with them and see if you can find out why we have such problems every time for you. I'll send it to everybody. It's in there now. That's the help number for GoTo, and maybe you can call back in on your telephone, because we can't hear you right now. And I'll come back to you. I'll try you again in a second. Jerry Pelfrey, can we hear you?
Yes, I believe you can.
We can.
Even though my internet goes in and out, so I'm going to be quick. It's just a question. I started taking melatonin, and so I researched it, and I'm not sure. So I'm asking the group. What I read was that melatonin can mask your PSA. And what they said was it really, you take your PSA and then you just double it because you're taking melatonin. And I know there are all kinds of guys that take it, and they take it from 6 milligrams to 20 to 30. But I'm only taking 6. And what have you heard? What has everybody else heard?
I've not heard that melatonin masks your PSA, but that doesn't mean much. But let me pass it along to some of the folks who are more knowledgeable around this. First of all, anybody else using melatonin?
I tried it, but I found it made me groggy in the morning, so I stopped.
And
I have
Jeff,
not heard about this issue at all.
Okay, that was my next question. Anyone else have anything to say about melatonin?
I take it, and it makes me groggy in the morning, and that's why I keep taking it.
This is John. I'm not coming up with anything about that so far.
Jerry, why are you taking it? As a anti-cancer medicine or for sleep?
Well, it's interesting that out of the whole group, I thought we'd have a pretty good conversation, but hardly anyone's using melatonin. I find that very interesting.
But why would you need melatonin?
Well, it's supposed to help you at night.
Are you having trouble sleeping?
No, I'm not. But there's also supposed to be a plus to melatonin for cancer.
Well,
I
don't, Jerry, I don't see it. There's no clear evidence. But I did find one paper that's a obscure culture paper which says that melatonin inhibited PSA production, but didn't stop cells from growing. So that's probably where that came.
Yeah, and it sounds like that's kind of a questionable study.
Well, I don't know that the study's questionable. I think it's in culture and who knows what it means, but that's probably where the information came from. But the question for
Okay.
me is, what good is it doing you if you're not having trouble sleeping?
Well, I was taking it because it's supposed to have some good effect. Oh God, I can't remember what that was. Anyway, I tried it. It hasn't done any good. So obviously, I'm just going to stop it. Why do it?
Well,
So-
hold on a second. I mean, I've heard a lot of discussion, especially when I listen to integrative oncologists about the use of melatonin. This isn't the first time I've heard. I mean, there are suggestions, and there is literature on that it helps with apoptosis, which is the blood flow to the cancer network, that it inhibits cell proliferation, that it does reduce tumor growth. I mean, but that's in general and not specific to prostate cancer. And so,
yeah,
if you go on some of these sites, and even if you listen to some of the experts we've had on, and they've talked about they have talked about the use of melatonin. We often talk about it in the context of sleep. That's where we usually talk about it. And for some people it works, for some people it doesn't work. But I don't want to say that that melatonin is not a more natural tumor suppressor. I mean, there's a lot of literature around that. So the fact, what I've never heard before, and I'm not opining one way or the other, whether that is good or bad literature. You know, I would probably go to somebody who I consider to be fairly integrative in their practice, and maybe even, you know, again, maybe somebody like Dr. E, who's not going to laugh me out the room when I say, E, what do you think about melatonin? Or, you know, some of the other docs that we like and we trust and who are more open-minded. But I've never heard that it inhibits PSA. That's definitely a new one on me. So, you know, I can only say, and maybe people like Ben and Len and Herb over the next week or so, they can look a little more, dig a little more into why melatonin might be an inhibitor, and whether it's appropriate for prostate cancer or not, and what the downsides are. I mean, I'd encourage somebody to do that. One of our brains trust, including Dr. John on that, if they want to take a look, or anybody else, and report back to us. Jimmy, did you say, we know you're groggy in the morning, with or without melatonin? Do you take melatonin?
Yeah, I didn't mean to be so glib. I'm always making jokes, but yes, I take it for sleep aid. I only sleep about 90 minutes to 2 hours at a time. And the melatonin seems to help me to get back to sleep easier. I take a combination of melatonin and CBD oil, and that helps me to stay sort of, you know, groggy in between my short bouts of sleep, because my sleep is interrupted so much. That is the issue for me. And it does seem to help, but I can't know for sure.
Anybody else experimented with melatonin? Okay. So just Jimmy and Jeff right now. Well, you know, if one of these guys has some time to devote and they can come back with a little more info on melatonin, it'd be great.
I take it every single night, so you know, I'll look for some information. I'm not the brain trust, but I'll look it up, because I do take it every night.
I took it for a year or more, some years ago. I didn't really find much one way or the other.
Thanks, Larry. Thanks, Larry. And Jimmy, you're part of the Brains Trust. You're our exercise man in the Brains Trust. We don't all have to be scientists to be in the Brains Trust.
You know, if this was the 1970s, I would just recommend phenobarbital because that worked right away. That's a long time ago. It's not on the table any longer.
If Jimmy wants somebody with access to medical literature to help him out, he can just call me.
Oh, get an excuse to call you anyway. That's excellent.
I just took a quick look around here, but I didn't, I see that there's a number of papers about melatonin and prostate cancer, maybe inhibiting prostate cancer growth, maybe inhibiting resistance. So some of these are mouse studies. A lot of them are lab studies, but I'll look. And I didn't see anything about PSA anywhere so far.
1/4 milligram of Ativan will help your sleep.
There you go. Much more
Well,
effective.
thank you. I guess I thought it was a simple question, but it turns out to be a little more involved. Thank you.
Jerry
That's it.
Pelfrey. Jerry Pelfrey, after all these years, you know that we can work and develop any question you ask us into something more than what it seems. Right?
Right.
We make the simple complicated.
That's right.
Yeah.
I will just say, by doing a very quick literature search, there are many papers in culture, in animal, not so much in animals even, that show if you add melatonin to cancer cells in a dish, you see changes. But there's nothing definitive beyond that. And there are lots of I can show you lots of papers. Do I think that they translate to humans? Not. There's no data.
Yeah.
Changes.
If you want to treat if you want melatonin to kill cells in a dish, take your cells out, put them in a dish, and we'll add melatonin. But the question is whether it does anything in a human body is not answerable right now.
Yeah, I came to the same conclusion as Herb looking at the literature. There are no clinical studies, so it would be foolish to be taking it if you think it has anti-cancer properties just based on cell culture, in my opinion.
So and I haven't read this, but it just caught my eye. I'm putting one link in there. It's not endorsed. It is melatonin and urological cancers, a new therapeutic approach. And magazine, what was it in? Cancer Cell International. Probably, I don't know. Is Cancer Cell International an acceptable journal, Herb, or not?
I mean, it wouldn't be one of the ones I reach for first.
Okay. Okay.
It has an impressive name, though.
It does.
Okay. It has an impressive name, and the title seems to be on there. So, guys, go at it. I put the link in there. You can read whatever it says, and we'll come back to somebody, please. Somebody next week on Tuesday with Peter. Somebody put their hand up to give us a report on melatonin. I'll let you guys communicate.
That paper was published by a group in Iran, Rick.
There you go. I said I'm just putting that. Does that make it suspicious because it comes from Iran?
Sort of.
Hell yeah.
Okay. All right. Maybe those Iranian mice respond differently. I don't know. All right, we're going to move on, and let's try Marc Valens again on the telephone. Marc, are you there with us this time?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Oh, I just quickly, so I've been on drug holiday for 7 weeks now. And I'm definitely feeling stronger. I'm able to get a lot more work done on the ranch than I had been. I think my brain's a little bit clearer. I still have no interest in sex. And I'm getting PSA and testosterone tests every month. Is there anything else I should be looking out for? I'm just, slightly worried that getting off of the drugs, the Xtandi and the Lupron, is the cancer going to want to come back?
Len, you're our expert on what to expect when you go on a drug holiday, and then we'll let anybody else follow on after you.
So Marc, what is your Gleason score and when were you diagnosed?
It's been 3 years. I had 5+4 Gleason. And then I've been I was on Lupron and Xtandi for 3 years. And I had extensive radiation from Mac Roach at UCSF.
And what's your current PSA?
It's undetectable.
For how long now?
It's for 3 years.
Oh, fantastic.
It was, but when I was diagnosed with cancer, it was 1. So I've never had PSA.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, then at some regular interval, you should be having, let's say, non-PSMA type scans, conventional bone scans or MRIs or CTs to make sure you don't have some sort of lesions growing that aren't producing PSA. But we'll put that aside for a moment. Well, actually, maybe you should do that first before you go on a drug holiday. But certainly, if it's legitimately non-detectable and you don't have cells that don't produce PSMA that are actually cancer, you're certainly entitled to a drug holiday at this point. You most likely would recur. I've done this at least 3 times, maybe 4, gone on intermittent therapy. Eventually, the PSA starts rising. So it's just a question of what's your tolerance, what's your comfort level with your PSA rising along with your testosterone levels, which will probably happen. Assuming they're producing PSA. It's not a straightforward answer, but it's not a straightforward situation.
Yeah, that's always been my worry since I never had the PSA to begin with. And now we're using the PSA to be a marker to see if the cancer's coming back. I'm not sure. I'm not real comfortable with that.
Yeah, I suggest you talk to your doctor about periodic scans that aren't dependent on PSA.
Yeah, well, I've been getting bone scans, but what other kind of scan is something that I should look into?
Well, CT scans would pick up soft tissue lesions. The bone scans, of course, pick up lesions in the bone. MRI
Multi-parametric MRI, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Because Dr. Borno at UCSF, she was totally in favor of taking a drug holiday, and she's not very concerned. She said, let's wait till we see PSA and then wait a while longer so we can count the doubling time, and then there's the option of taking a PSMA test if the PSA comes up.
Right. There was a recent paper by a Dr. Armstrong, I think he was from Johns Hopkins, where he claimed up to 34% of guys with undetectable PSAs had, in fact, progressive cancer.
Uh-huh.
Now, these are guys
That's
who were
my,
heavily treated, like yourself, over the years. And as you say, you never produced PSA to begin with, so you definitely should be scanned
okay.
first, and then if they don't find anything, then try the holiday. Yeah.
Well, I've been on the holiday for almost 2 months already, so.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Any
and
T level rise?
what's that?
Any rise in your T levels, testosterone?
No, it's still way down there, and no rise at all in the PSA. And
Okay.
So I'd say I'd say that in Dr. Borno and Dr. Roach, you have really good medical team. And I think that if you went back to Dr. Borno and you said, I don't produce PSA, even though I had a 4+4 original disease. What about if we were to do a CT scan just in case there's anything hiding? I would bet dollars to donuts that she'd say, yeah, that's fine. And I don't think you'd have to travel all the way to San Francisco to do that. You could do that type of scan somewhere that's much more convenient for you, Mark. And
yeah.
that gives you the peace of mind. You go somewhere in Ashland or to get a PSA, to get a CT scan.
CT scan.
Yeah,
Okay.
she'll know what scan to get. But if you say to her, could it be I don't produce PSA, I just want to make sure, we can maybe even cite the Armstrong paper. I remember seeing it too. But one of these guys will find the Armstrong paper and they'll
Okay.
put it in there for you. But she'll know Armstrong. He's a really good guy. And she's she's compassionate, she's reasonable, and she's gonna say, yeah, go ahead and do it.
Yeah. We talked about the fact that I'd never had PSA, and she felt confident in just doing the PSA and testosterone checks every month was all I needed to do. But I'm not 100% aboard. I think there's a little part of me that worries. And, but I'll see the CT. I'll see about getting the CT scan.
Yeah, I see Ben shaking his head, but it could have been at something else. Did you have something you wanted to add, Ben?
Well, she's dropped in my estimation as a result of this. I thought she was pretty good too, but I'm kind of shocked.
That and say a little more on that.
I share Mark's concern.
Right.
How can you be looking at something that wasn't hot, that didn't change in the first place for a change?
Okay, well, thanks, guys. You give me some more to work on.
Okay, and we'll try and get. Now we've got somebody on the telephone that just came on, and I think we've got some background music with them as well as an added bonus. Who just joined us on the telephone? Somebody just came on joined our call from the telephone. Would you like to identify? We can hear you fumbling around there. Would you like to tell us who you are, or would you? If you're very welcome to listen. If you just want to listen, if you just want to call in, if you just want to listen in, that's fine. But if you'd like to participate, just holler and we can check in again. Okay, well, we're going to mute you right now because we're getting a little bit of feedback from you. So there you go. Thank you very much for muting yourself. Appreciate it. Or somebody muted you. Maybe it was our King Muter, our chief muter today. That's who it was. All right, I'm moving along this list, and I'm going to ask Gary Peters what's on his mind.
Thanks, Rick. Is there a GU Medonc in St. Louis that we recommend?
Yeah, there is at Washington U, and I can't remember his name. Oh my gosh, and who went to him? There's a guy in Peter. There's a guy in your group that saw a GU Medonc at Washington U. Do you remember who it was?
Vaguely, I can't remember who it was. Maybe I'll look up.
I would need to look at and I got a feeling that, but maybe he moved recently. Let me just look. Washington University. Okay, let me see. I'm gonna have to get back to you on this one. I'm trying to think who the heck it was. Oh, there was a fellow in St. Louis that used to attend regularly, but we haven't seen him for a while. Vic Palisotti. And who did he see? That's right. Okay, so that's right. And now it's coming back to me a bit. The two that we think are, but we don't really have experience with them, Peter. There's a guy called at Siteman, which is the big cancer center at St. Louis. There's a guy called Aurora, 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 and he's a younger guy. He's also got a PhD. I can't remember. I think. Bear with me. I think I bookmarked him at the time, and I think he was the guy that that I liked. And let me just look under docs. Aurora. I'm pretty sure I bookmarked him. Yes, Vivek Aurora. I'm putting him in the chat window for you right now. There you go. And the other guy who was a guy called Picus, P-I-C-U-S, but he wasn't so, he didn't strike me as much as Aurora. I think if it was me, my choice would have been Aurora.
Okay. Thank you, Rick.
Did you click on the link? Does it open for you?
I didn't click on it yet. I've just copied it.
Okay. All right. Well, you can click on it. You can click on these links right from the chat window. They'll open up in your browser right as we're talking.
Yep, it opens.
Okay.
Thank you.
Who's it for?
Someone who is someone I told about AnCan, but first they want to try to find a doctor in the area, and I want to make sure that they see a GU Medonc and hopefully someone that we recommend or that you recommend.
Okay, well, like I say, I don't have direct experience with this guy Aurora. He looks good on paper, but I can't say more than that, unfortunately.
What about this guy Paczynski?
Sorry, who's that, Peter?
Dr. Paczynski there at Washington, who is a GU Medonc, went to Stanford.
Don't know him. Do you know him? Is it somebody that?
I don't, but I looked it up and he looks like he's got good credentials. It's
Well,
possible.
there are a few that say they do, because I looked at it extensively for Vic at the time, and there were quite a few who said they do. But a lot of them, when you dug in, they really didn't have much of a background. And the two that I came up with that I would go to see was this guy Aurora, who was a younger guy, and he did a fellowship somewhere good. I can't remember exactly where. And the other guy was a guy called Picus. I'll put him Picus. And as I recall, he'd been around for quite some time. Picus. But this fellow Vivek Aurora, let's see, I mean, he was young. Mass resident fellow. Yeah, he was a fellow at Memorial Sloan
I mean,
Kettering.
he's got all the right. I mean, he ticks all the right buttons here.
Boxes.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at his resume, Rick, he's the real thing. I mean,
Yeah.
MD, PhD at Southwestern, Mass General, intern and resident, and then a fellow at Memorial. You can't do better.
Yeah. That's why I think I thought to myself, he's the guy I would want to see, because he seems like he has the background. But you know, what you see on paper and what you get can be two very different things. And I don't think we know anybody that's actually seen him. So, but I wouldn't have a problem recommending him based on what we see on paper, as Herb says.
Okay. Thank you both.
Again, pleasure. All right. Les, how are you? What's going on in the northwest of Illinois?
Okay, well, when I was on a call 2 weeks ago, I said I was headed back up to the Mayo Clinic. They had reported they had done the C11 choline PET scan and verified with the PSMA scan that prostate cancer had gone to my left testicle.
Right.
And as mentioned on the group at that time, 2 weeks ago, that nobody had ever heard of that before. Well, apparently that's fairly common. When I talked to Dr. Kwan, he said, I see or have 6,000 patient visits a year, and I have seen 2 others that has gone to the testicle my entire career. So it's apparently not very common. But he's fairly convinced that it is cancer, but even they did a MRI, and even that they weren't exactly, wasn't conclusive. So they decided to do a biopsy. And I'm now sitting on a 15-inch rubber donut inflatable. Yeah, it's a little uncomfortable. But I don't have the results yet. But
okay.
They've been rather skeptical. Some of the Dr. Kwan seems to be fairly convinced that it is in fact cancer, but others are not fully convinced. So we'll see what the biopsy says. So that's about it.
Well, you know, surgery is a drastic step, and I think that you've got to take all the precautions. I mean, I spoke to Alexa about this because her fiance Brian has metastatic testicular cancer that's in remission, thank God, right now. And by the way, Brian's going to be our guest on Solo Arts Heal this month. So watch out for the Solo Arts Heal. And as most of you who have had any interaction with Alexa know, she's super smart when it comes to all matters of cancer. She did tell me that there is a marker for testicular cancer, but I forget what it is. But there is a known marker for testicular cancer. So I would hope that they've at least done a blood test for that. And if not, you know, it would be just for good order's sake. If it were me, I'd want that marker run. Some of the guys on this call may, my brains trust may know what the marker is. I think that as uncomfortable as it must be, and I think everybody on this call empathizes with you. It was a smart decision to do, Les, and everyone here is waiting with bated breath to hear what you come back to us with.
Well, apparently they haven't decided for certain. The other doctors that we discussed it with were not 100% convinced that surgery was the thing to do. That they were going to wait until the results for the biopsy, but they were talking about possibility of radiation or some other things because they weren't too convinced that surgery would be the thing to do. But you said some of these markers for testicular cancer, would the PSMA and choline PET scan show up the same way if it was, in fact, some other cancer?
Well, the PSMA would not, but I think the PET scan would. Let me refer to Herb or Dr. John.
Don't know about the other PET scans if they'd show up.
Well, I think choline would show up for cancer. Right, a choline scan would pick up cancer.
Cancer in general?
Right. Because it's a
I didn't know
metabolic scan.
would there be any differentiation between some other cancers or prostate cancer?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the markers for testicular cancer, I just read a quick search, are several that they can look for. And they will show up in blood tests.
I mean,
right.
one thing you can do, Les, I know that Alexa gave you Brian's email address, I recall. So, you know, check with Brian and ask him I think he's pretty knowledgeable too, because he works in the cancer biz as well. And just ask him about the markers for testicular and then find out if they've run those markers.
Okay, I did send them an email, but I had not gotten a response. You know, of course I didn't ask this question.
How long ago did you send him the email?
It's been probably a couple of weeks. Well, it was shortly after you sent me
No worries. He may have not seen it, and I'll give Alexa a heads up and ask Brian to respond to you. And I'm writing it down here, markers, Brian, and so we'll get back to you.
Okay, so would you suggest then that I contact the Mayo Clinic and inquire about that prior to doing anything, you know, as soon as I get the information?
Well, I mean, Herb's put in 3 markers. I think HCG, as I remember, HCG was the one that that Alexa mentioned to me, because I remember asking her, are there any markers like PSA? And I'm pretty certain she said HCG, which is one of the ones that Herb's put in the chat window. I mean, if it were me, I'd say, have they run those markers? What about anybody else on the call? What would you say?
Why not? What's the downside?
There
You'll
is
be able
none.
to immunostain the slide. You know, there are all kinds of markers that are going to be on the biopsy slide.
What do you mean by markers on the biopsy slide?
They're going to do immunohistochemistry on the
Are they?
slide for a differential diagnosis. Well, they did at MSK. They may not at,
Okay. They may not do it everywhere.
Les, what were your symptoms? Did you have pain or swelling?
No, there's no pain. It's just that it showed up very bright on particularly on the PSMA scan. It showed up bright and shiny in the left testicle.
So no symptoms other than now you're uncomfortable because of the biopsy.
No other symptoms.
Interesting.
I've never had any symptoms from my prostate cancer. Only reactions from all the treatments.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any thoughts or anything they'd like to suggest to Les?
I had missed, this is John, I had missed the point that this was a PSMA scan that picked this up. So it sure doesn't sound like testicular cancer, does it?
No.
Was it? I thought it was a choline scan.
Well, the choline scan picked it up first, and there were people that weren't convinced, so they decided to do the PSMA scan in addition, and that showed up really bright.
Oh, well.
With the choline, it seemed to be iffy, but with the PSMA scan, it looked like a beacon.
Right. Well,
Yeah, I
keep
think
us
if it was
posted.
me, I'd say get that whole testicle out of there now.
Well, that was the original plan, but the visit, I was up there last week, and they seemed to be hesitating. They said, well, there's complications with that we would rather, or think they might rather do radiation or something else.
Huh, okay.
Rather than surgery.
I didn't think it was that complicated. They know best.
Yeah, for Marc Valens, I don't know if you can see the chat window, but Gary Peters was kind enough to put in the paper that Len referred to. Can you see that, Mark? Or
Yes,
if not,
I got it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, excellent. And you know that's a really good thing. You can send this on to Halaborno and say, you know, I read this paper, I saw this paper, and do you think we should do a bone scan, a CT scan? And you know that gives you more cred when you ask her. Is what I would say. And thank you very much, Gary, for tracking that down. Okay. Russ Hoover, are you counting the days to Burning Man?
Yes, we are. All we have to do is figure out how to take enough water and everything else we need, because there isn't anything there in the desert. Anyway, again, I'm going to say this thanks to AnCan and Rick in particular. Basically, I picked up the phone and got an appointment with Dr. E. I saw her on the 15th of June. Amazing woman. I mean, I had sent all my paperwork out ahead of time. She walked in with nothing in hand, and she had probably read everything that I sent her from every doctor I was to. She knew all about my background. And she spent, believe it or not, the better part of an hour and a half, almost 2 hours, going over everything that was done, should have been done, things that, you know, just things that we never thought about. And they took bled me to death that day. And then she scheduled the next Tuesday a PYLARIFY test, which I thought was amazing. I know they juggled things around. So on the next Tuesday, I went in the morning, had a PYLARIFY test, and then in the afternoon, she met with us again. And I've never sat down with a doctor that put everything up on the screen and explained everything to you the way she did. And I jokingly called it the cucumber slicing machine, where she started at the top of my.
Got to see the PET scan.
We actually got to see the scan.
Slice by slice.
Slice by slice in glorious color. And she started down with a joke and she said, "This is your head, these are your ears, here's your chin," and went down through my whole body. And the net result of all that was all the 20 to 25 spots that metastasized in my body when this was picked up 2 years ago are gone. She said they are healed or they are healing. And the only thing left that they could find were 2 tiny spots that were uncertain, but they're going to, we're going to keep an eye on uncertain in my prostate. So I came home feeling damn good, taking a Lupron shot, which was due 1st of June because I wanted to see her. And I asked her about the enzosuicide that I had been taking because it really, really knocked me between brain fog and fatigue and just everything else. And I said, "What should I do about that?" She said, "Quit taking it." And the wife and I are sitting there like, "What?" She said, "Just quit taking it." Where every other doctor I've been to was, "Oh, you're going to be on this for years and years and years." And her game plan right now is I have a teleconference with her the 3rd week of July. Before then, I'm going to do another extensive blood work here in Florida and have it shipped to her. And I'm going to have another PET scan done in Florida and have it shipped to her. The ones that she did in Houston, she said, "These are my baseline." She needs to know where I was that day, and she wants to look at it 30 days down and see what's going on. And when we call, tell her how I'm feeling. I feel better now than I have felt in 2 years. I mean, I'm still fatigued. I still have hot flashes. The brain fog is basically gone. Amazing. My sleep pattern has moved from an hour and a half maximum to 3 or 4 hours maximum without, drugs or anything else. So getting off Xtandi, enzalutamide, whatever you call it, has in 2 weeks totally changed what's going on in my body, and I can sense it. So that's where I'm coming from. The test that they did give me, I don't know whether they said or not, was a PYLARIFY test, which was a radiation test thing, which they had to get pre-qualified for. And I told Regina when we got out of the room, I said, this must have been some kind of radiation, because the guy come in the room to give me the injection. He had a lead apron on. He had lead gloves on. And so I'm like, "Whoa, wait a minute." He goes, "I do this all the time. That's why." And he said, "This will be out of your system by tomorrow morning." But I had no side effects, nothing with it. But this was all amazing to me. End of comments. Open to suggestions.
Well, the first comment is, for me, number one, I'm thrilled that we can't see any Mets, because that puts a whole new perspective on your relationship with Regina. Now she's wondering how she can get rid of you rather than how she can keep you,
She's in the background listening to you here, so go ahead.
I know she is. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to be around for a while. She's got a different problem on her hands. The second, and the second thing is that we can get you a break on these drugs that are making you so crazy, and you feel comfortable about it. And you know, we're really working to improve your quality of life. So, and as you know, Len remembers only too well, we've been trying to get you to shift to another GU, to another medical oncologist, somebody who's a GU med onc for the longest time. And so I'm really thrilled for you, truly. I'm very happy. Let me throw it out to anybody else who would like to ask you any questions.
I have something that I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Earlier, Marc Valens was talking about he's on holiday for 7 weeks. He said he's been off of Lupron and enzalutamide. And he said he's feeling much better and he's working and all this. And I thought, you know, 7 weeks after Lupron discontinuation, feeling that much better would to me just be a placebo, especially if his testosterone is still that low. But it's not the first time that I heard somebody say he stopped enzalutamide and found a lot of relief quickly. And Russell, that seems to be your experience as well.
Yes.
I just think that.
I mean, Jimmy, I don't think that's placebo. I mean, yeah, that ends.
No. I just meant that Marc had discontinued both Lupron and enzalutamide, and I was wondering, well, what's the deal? And then I thought the enzalutamide. It's not the first time I'd heard somebody getting a lot of relief quickly after stopping enzalutamide, as opposed to Lupron, which I think would take longer, wouldn't it?
Well, Lupron takes, I mean, they're different mechanisms. I mean, enzalutamide is a receptor blocker, and it washes out of your system pretty quickly because that's why you have to take it every day. And once you wash it out, it should be returning pretty fast. Whatever it's doing, and it's not, and we're not talking about blocking the testosterone receptor. We're talking that it has other side effects. So that's not unusual to me that it would disappear that fast. And you're right, Lupron is a long-term suppression, and it's going to take longer for testosterone to come back.
So
when I hear guys complaining about enzalutamide, they usually are very bitterly complaining about it. That's why.
Yeah, because it really has significant. I mean, from everybody who talks about it, enzalutamide gets into your brain and screws things up. So
guys,
and we don't know how.
Let me jump in a second, because we are very fortunate to have on this call somebody who's really qualified to talk about this. We have a lot of speculators, but we actually have somebody who has spent their life dealing with these issues and is qualified to do so. So I would like to know what Dr. John thinks about this. What do you say? Don't look surprised when I say that.
I thought you were building up to introduce somebody else, you know, who had been on both drugs. By the way, I have AnCan to thank for the fact that I'm not on enzalutamide. When Dr. Petrolak wanted to start me on it, I said, oh, no, the guys, you know, I learned from the guys that I wanted to try to get darolutamide, and I'm so glad that he was willing to go along with it. Russ had what had the appearance of depression, except it was caused by enzalutamide, and he had brain fog, and it was caused by enzalutamide. So the enzalutamide is gone, and as Herb explained, therefore the side effects are gone.
And what about the fact that it's got to take some time for testosterone to come back? And I mean, can the lack of testosterone be made up by the lack of enzalutamide? Can the receptors be that sensitive to whatever testosterone in his body to give him the relief?
Yeah, I don't think his depression and brain fog were necessarily mediated by blocking that androgen receptor. They may have just been, like Herb also pointed out, direct toxic effects on the brain.
Big time.
Because look at how he is now, and he's got no testosterone probably yet, or not much. I don't know.
No, my testosterone was always low. My testosterone in this last test that Dr. E ran was 20.
Yeah.
And my PSA number when I started this whole thing back 2 years ago was 4 something. And my PSA number was always like 4, 5, 6, something like that. The month after I got on all this stuff, my PSA number went down to 0.9 and change and was a real slow curve all the way down to my last PSA number was 0.225. And I am castrate sensitive. So whatever all that means, that's what happened to me. I don't know how that helps or hurts anybody else. The only other thing that I was amazed about, that Dr. E looked at all the blood work and she just had a hissy fit in a nice way about my vitamin D. And my vitamin D number, whatever that number means, for the last 2 years has been like 30 plus or minus a point. And she said, "This is ridiculous." I said, "Well, I'm on a supplement." And she said, "Doesn't anybody read your blood work?" I said, "Every month." And I keep asking, "How's the blood work?" And I keep hearing everything's within normal. And she's saying to me, and has given me a prescription for a much stronger vitamin D. She said, it should be at least 60, whatever that number means, to help with your immune system, to help fight things. And it's an interesting thing. I have never heard it anywhere else, including conversations with you guys where, I mean, she really, I mean, you could tell she was unhappy with that number. And I didn't know any better. Why would I know any better?
I wouldn't be.
Russ, we do talk about vitamin D, and we talk about it because it was something that was in my own direct experience. I mean, when I got diagnosed, my vitamin D was something like 18, I think, and you really want a vitamin D level that is at least 45 and preferably closer to 60. And, you know, I've said, and we haven't talked about it recently, but I've said that, you know, you start off with maybe 5,000. She's probably given you 10,000 or maybe even 50,000. It's hard to OD on vitamin D. 50,000.
50,000.
So, you know, what will happen is you'll take the 50,000 for a while, and then you need to test again. And slowly you regulate your vitamin D and you find the right level. I mean, I think I'm now on 1,000. I was on 400 for a while, and then I was lowish, and so I just upped it. But it's really important that you test. The test you have to do is vitamin D hydroxy 25. Vitamin D hydroxy 25. And you do that. And you should really get that test done. If you're in treatment, you should get that test done quarterly and then adjust the amount. Now, your vitamin D is naturally going to go down in the winter, even in sunny places, because you don't make vitamin D when the sun is low in the sky. So from October to February, you don't make vitamin D, even if you're in the sun. And you have to regulate accordingly. And she's spot on. I mean, as usual, absolutely agree to her. Len has put something in. Many experts recommend a level between 20 and 40. That sounds really low to me. You know, I would say
that's from Mount Sinai's website.
That sounds awful low. 20 is awfully low. I mean, I would be questioning. You might mention that to Dr. O, send that to Dr. O and say, doesn't this sound a little low, Dr. O? I would say 45, unless it's a different measurement, but I don't think so. I would say that you should be, I mean, 20 is way too low. Way too low. I mean, that's exactly what Dr. E just said.
Well, Dr. E said the 30 was too low in general, but because of my condition, it was way too low. And again, I've had two doctors in Florida look at my blood work
for months,
for 2 years, and my blood work has been done monthly. And everybody goes, everything looks okay. So again, yeah, I know I need the vitamin D, but nobody's ever talked about the number to me with my condition. Let's put it that way. Until I ran into Dr. E.
Yeah, the low, I would say, I mean, at least for what I use is 45, and I'd rather it was higher than that. But I don't like it to drop much below 45, and I might take a slightly higher dose at 45. But she'll get it up there with that 50 thou, and I've seen that done before. But you won't stay on 50 thou. She'll just use it to get you up, and then you'll find the right level to. It might be 2,000, it might be 1,000 a day. Whatever it is, you'll find the level.
Okay.
I wouldn't even be surprised if Dr. E didn't give him a drug holiday.
Well, that's what we're looking at. I've been off everything for 2 weeks, and she said stay off everything until we talk July 21st. And I have a question there, is because she was talking about going back on darolutamide and something else I forget. Anyway, yeah, Ozempic, maybe. And I've Regina and I have been talking about this, and she said, well, maybe in a couple of months or so, if those two little spots are still there, we might think about spot radiation. And in layman's terms, I'm thinking about, why would I go back on drugs if I have two little spots that nobody's excited about? Why don't I reverse it, get the radiation, kill the spots, and leave the drugs in reserve for down the road?
Well, one thing that I think I'd examine with Dr. E is that you never had the primary treated, and nowadays we do tend to treat the primary, even if you're metastatic on diagnosis, and it's possible that that you might be a candidate for treating the primary, even though you're in remission. And that's something that you might want to dig into. Now she may say, well, we don't even have to treat the whole primary, we could just do the spot. But you don't really know where, when you've had a lot of cancer in your gland, you don't know where it's hanging out. So you may be a candidate for that, but that's something to discuss. And frankly, if you were, you could do it with SBRT in 4 or 5 sessions. You could do it in either locally, or you could do it at Houston Methodist in a week, in a week's treatment. So anyone else want to?
All of my spots were in my bones.
Right.
Nowhere else.
But it starts originally. I mean, when you were first diagnosed with those 20 to 25 spots, my guess is that your prostate gland lit up. It had to.
Yep.
I mean, we don't see, like, it's sometimes in other cancers, like our friend Marc, who was with us last week. We never saw cancer in his bladder, but we saw it in the prostate from the beginning. And sometimes that can happen with certain cancers. But in your case, you never had that primary treated. Anyway, we're about done. Anyone else want to say anything before we finish up with Russ?
Not even a teeny tiny thank you to the enzalutamide. It kicked your ass, Russell, but it looked like it kicked your tumor's ass too.
Yeah, I think the standard or treatment.
And it's funny you're being interviewed by Perrotta for that.
The standard of treatment, in other words, the Lupron and the enzalutamide, did its job. It kicked my ass, but it did the job. And by the way, I have a study coming up online with Bayer about enzalutamide. One of these online things that I think in the background that AnCan through Savvy, I guess it is.
SAVVY.
SAVVY.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
coming up about that. Just about enzalutamide, and they seem to be still trying to push this stuff. I mean, it does the job, but you know, it to me, it's like you got a hangnail and you used a sledgehammer to cure it. But that's
Well,
my body, and everybody's different.
I mean, the problem is, Russ,
That will work.
that the drug that we'd all like to use, darolutamide, isn't approved for every particular condition. And
Yeah.
so they have to use enzalutamide, or they can use, I forgot, Len, help me, the other lutamide.
Apalutamide. Apalutamide.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's going to be the same as enzalutamide because it's going to get into the brain.
Brain,
And
yeah,
I
the both
guess
area.
Abby
Yep.
also.
Yeah.
Abby goes in the brain.
Yeah. Abby is another alternative. Yep. 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 All right, gents. Well, we
So Rick,
are only, yes, we're
what
only
did you say
5
that?
minutes over. And Len, who wants to speak?
This last. Yeah, what did you say that test was? Something 25.
Oh, I'll put it in. It's
25 hydroxy vitamin D.
vitamin D hydroxy 25. I'll write it in the chat window.
Okay.
Vitamin D dash hydroxy 25. Okay, and that's the right test to add to your.
Okay.
That's the
Thank you.
right test. Okay. And anything else that I know that Ben, I mentioned it in the reminder. I know Ben was quite impressed when he listened to Dr. E on that tumor board. Ben, do you want to say anything about that? I don't know if anybody else bothered to run that tumor board that we gave the link to.
Yeah, we did. Very impressed. Very impressed.
She was.
She was after everybody's ass on that, wasn't she, Ben?
Yes, I had never heard her speak, but now I will never forget her.
Well, we'll get her on here sometime. I've been trying to work with her. She wants to talk to you guys, and you want to talk to her, so we'll get her on. But she's been flying around everywhere. I mean, as somebody sent me, Jim Ward. I knew she was she was in Amsterdam, and she did some darolutamide work this past few days. So you know, she's been around everywhere. All right. Anybody else have anything urgent? Anybody who came on late or wants to raise anything? If not, we'll close out. Make it an early night. Pat, did you had something or not? No.
Good night, everyone.
No, I was just waving by.
Oh, just waving.
Y'all have a good.
Okay.
Y'all have a good night.
Good night.
Good
Go
night.
out and
Good
look
night,
at
everyone.
Have a
fireworks.
nice week.